Morning. Guess just say afternoon. How was everyone today? Excellent. Bing bong. Hello. Good afternoon. Hey, it is. Sign-in sheet. Okay, our last one. Okay, we have 1 minute. 1 minute. Quiz 4. Just open up quiz 4. Due 1 week from Friday. Do you guys want to have a fourth assignment? Yes, no? Answer yes.
It's not that I do, but I might change to bump up my grade.
Okay. Okay. How many of you say no? Well, think about it.
Will there be an extra?
Think about it. We'll wait till more of the class gets here and then we'll ask again. So there should be more of the class already because it is officially, you can't tell, but that says 12:30. There's more people. Because interestingly, well, interesting. Today's topic, it will be a fun one. There's that. So while we're waiting, what's going on in the world? Yeah, that one's back up on the docket. Supreme Court's going to be taking a case from Mississippi that deals with abortion rights, which is interesting. One, you have the whole issue of life and death. Two, you have the issue of personal privacy and medical issues. Well, society's been kind of taking a turn there. Three, probably some of the craziest thing I'd seen were demonstrators out at the Capitol who were taking, I guess, day after pills publicly. It's like, why? I guess make a statement, but I don't get it. Usually I talk pretty heavily about that whenever I'm in crim law and we're into the discussion of homicide. And basically what it ends up being is there are circumstances where homicide is allowed. You can say self-defense. That's one where it's interesting to see that people tend not to acknowledge that it is life from the very start. It's like they'll say fetus and clump of cells and that kind of stuff. It's like those who say that may or may not be familiar with the actual processes in, well, development, neonatal, prenatal development. They don't have any idea of when really much of anything occurs. They'll know heartbeat, maybe neural tube. Usually don't know the date of viability whenever the child could go and live on their own if they were born premature, which is like the earliest to date is 22 weeks. So you're talking about not very long after there have been premature birth at 22 weeks that survived. And we start talking, well, child can survive without the mother. Why are we still terminating? That's a hell of an issue to get into. Usually I just start talking about numbers. This number level, you guys probably won't have me for criminal law, so I'll talk a little bit about it now. The thing to kind of look at is what birth control does, the numbers, and basically what's unknown about it. So if you look at, say, take birth control out of it entirely. How many people, women, get pregnant, don't ever know it because cycle is normal. It's like, you'll never know that. Odds are it's fairly high. Then you add in the birth control, and what it does, how it works is, one, it can keep women from dropping an egg. Two, it'll keep the egg from attaching. So then you're talking about potential life that doesn't attach. You're talking the same concept. That's why sometimes referred to as an abortifacient. Then again, though, you'll still never have those numbers. And then you get to the ones where you're taking actual steps into it. Depending on where you sit in terms of morality and that issue, if you see life as being a conception or not, it's like people draw different lines, different places. And it's complex, but it always a difficult topic. I'm really curious to see what happens with it, because literally once you get to that point of viability, it's like, why are we even discussing it then? Like, it's not an issue. Birth the child. If there's health issues, that's a different thing. But I don't know. It's a hell of a thing. New York City. You ever looked at New York City's rates? They get in the news every now and again for it, where it's minority children more are aborted than born. It's like, that's a symbol of a whole other problem outside of abortion. And you need to realize that those two things are going to correlate. You know, to what position, to what degree our society puts minorities in that position to where they have to make that horrible choice is frightening. Better if we can fix it. Way forward, I don't know. So that's up on the docket. What else has there been?
There's been a first case of that. Whatever that coronavirus virus is confirmed in California.
Omicron is here. End of the world. It is here. And it's probably much farther along than that, but that's just the first detected one. Yeah, we'll see what happens with that. Hopefully, it's a whole lot of ado about nothing. But there you go with that. Other issues. I can't think of anything. Ooh, Rumble. Anyone hear about Rumble? Rumble's an alternative social media platform that most people don't use. Apparently, it's going up for public trading. So people are looking to make millions off of that. We'll see what happens there. Today's discussion. Last time I alluded to it a little bit. We'll get into it now. So this class is diversity and ethics. The book's got diversity issues throughout it, but it really needs its own separate discussion aside from ethical stuff. So that's what today's going to focus in on. This will be fun. I tend to ask people, and I asked you all this last time, is it okay to punch a Nazi? It's like, and even if we go with the actual member of the SS, Nazi, like maybe yes, maybe no. Usually people lean towards yes. When I ask it more broadly and don't specify that, still there's that inclination towards yes. I'll read you a couple things and I'll show you a couple things. Okay, so we want to start out with, where was it? Scanlon. The difficulty of tolerance, 203. Too far? Actually, why don't we just do this? We'll download that. Is it going to download that? There it goes. We may talk about that. We'll see if we get that far. And I'll share my screen with you. Share screen. Yes, share the screen. Okay, so we'll say, open up this one, and we'll move down to page 203. The value of tolerance. First paragraph. Why value tolerance? Let's read it. The relation with one's fellow citizens that tolerance makes possible. Without tolerance, you cannot relate to one another. It's easy to see that tolerant person and intolerant person have different attitudes towards those in society with whom they agree. Tolerant person's attitude is this: even though we disagree, they are as fully members of society as I am, entitled to the protections of law, as entitled as I am to live as they choose to live. In addition, this is the hard part, neither their way of living nor mine is uniquely the way of society. Merely two among potentially many different outlooks that our society can include, each of which is equally entitled to be expressed in living as one mode of life that others can adopt. If one view is at any moment numerically or culturally predominant, this should be determined on the accumulated choices of individual members of society at large. Okay, 205. Scroll down a couple pages. Tolerance is the level of political society. At the level of political society is a different matter. The goods at stake, such as the right to vote, hold office, participate in public forum, do not lose their meaning if they are extended to people with whom we disagree about the kind of society we'd like to have, even to those who reject its most basic tenets. One can become a member of society and is entitled to these goods just by being born into it. One is required to obey the laws and institution as long as one remains within its territory. The argument of tolerance that I've been describing is based on the idea of society and the idea of the relation of fellow citizens that it involves one we have reason to value. The form of alienation I've mentioned occurs when the terms of this relation are violated, when we deny others who are just as much members of society as we are the right to their part in defining and shaping it. We'll stop there. What is tolerance? Okay, give me an example of intolerance. Yeah, you talk neo-Nazis. That's a good example. Say racism, so on and so forth. Usually whenever I talk about racism, I talk about if you are a true racist, can you have a friend who's of the race you hate? Kind of interesting thought. Can you? Say no, maybe. I'll show you a couple of videos here in a second. Okay, goes on a little bit more here. It talks, this is more focused in on religion. But I want to go to 207. That's down here. Okay. Where are those questions at? Here we go. Does this mean that in a truly tolerant society, there could be no public direct declarations of this kind? He's talking religion here. No advocacy or enforcement by the state of any particular doctrine, not even tolerance itself. Right? It's intolerant to espouse tolerance as an official doctrine. Is it intolerant to have tolerance taught in state schools supported in state-sponsored advertising campaigns? Where is this book from? I need to look back at that. Why? Because that's a significant issue right now, isn't it? There's that thing that happened yesterday at the symposium. Critical race theory. Why was that a topic of discussion? Yeah. 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 It's very, very interesting to see that step being taken. Have that trying to remember. I saw it was someone who was arguing against CRT. I forget what his argument was. It was basically about should we teach eugenics? That's what it was. Should we teach eugenics in schools? Person responded, no. Why not? Say, if you say no to that, why would you say yes to this? Should you teach eugenics in school? Yes or no? Eugenics is the practice of selecting those who are genetically superior to others. I would say yes. Why? Because you need to learn about bad ideas. That's why. You don't learn about it. You can't identify. Oh, we'll go to the abortion thing. Why? Because there's a relationship there. What is that relationship? Well, if you listen to politics and that kind of stuff, what they'll say is Margaret Sanger was a eugenicist, which may be the case. There is a letter you can find from her where she talks specifically. We do not want the Black people to think that we're doing this as a way to keep their population down. Okay. Maybe it's eugenics and that's what she's saying. Maybe it's we don't want this to go out as the reason why, but we want it to be a valued choice that they actually have, right? So there's two sides to that coin, positive, negative, one way or the other. Then there's the way that it acts. And like I said, in New York City, more likely not to make it out of the womb alive. That's not good. So in that sense, is it acting in that way? There's an argument there. You talk about Germany, blonde hair, blue eyes. That's what you need to be. Not good stuff. You need to learn about the fact that people would make selections on those types of things and try to craft a species, people. That's kind of a horrific idea, right? Who gets to reproduce, who doesn't? We'll talk more about that.
Sperm bank, they want your occupation, they want your GPA, like
Mhm.
who does their you can choose.
Yeah, you're given a selection. Yeah. Funny story about sperm bank. This is off topic, and then we'll get back to this. There was once a case of a person made an anonymous donation. At one point, the person who received it became aware of who the person was actually able to take him to court and get child support. Yeah, like that's happened before. Crazy story. I'll see if I can find the case, and if anybody's interested, I can share. The world's crazy. It's like, don't get me wrong, the world is crazy. But that's supposed to be advocating. I wouldn't necessarily do that. You don't want to do that. Here, we'll go with the first one. I'll show you the first one, then I'll show you the second one, just the first part of the second. There we go. All right. How many of you have ever heard of Daryl Davis? You ever heard that name before? Daryl Davis. No. Okay. The reason I ask about punching a Nazi is, can you interact with someone with whom you disagree? Nazis, even the image of it is one of those horrific. Most people are aware of the nature of just how bad it was, which is why you get that strong response. Not exactly a tolerant response, but this is an interesting story. That off of there. Hurry up.
So this is a police officer's uniform. A Baltimore City police officer in particular. Best of friends. But, you know, I first heard about Robert White when I was a teenager. And then I later met him. I met him just a month after he got out of prison. He was in prison serving a sentence for assault with intent to murder 2 black men with a shotgun, and another sentence, conspiring to bomb a synagogue in Baltimore. Now, I am a professional musician. I tour all over this country and around the world playing music. So how do I end up with a policeman's uniform? He worked for the police department by day, but he also had another job, which required a different kind of uniform. He was the Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan for the state of Maryland. This is his robe. This is what he wore when he conspired to bomb the synagogue and when he made plans to kill 2 black men with a shotgun. To understand why I have these items, let's take a little journey back in my life. I was born in Chicago in 1958. At the age of 10, in 1968, my parents had moved to Belmont, Massachusetts, a suburb of Boston. I was one of 2 black kids in the entire area, at least in the school. I joined the Cub Scouts at the age of 10 at the invitation of some of my white male friends. And we had a march from Lexington to Concord to commemorate the ride of Paul Revere. My den mother let me carry the American flag. And as I was marching as the only black scout in this parade, along with the Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, and Brownies, I think 4-H Club was there and some other organizations. As I was marching down the street, somewhere along the parade route, I began getting hit with bottles, soda pop cans, rocks, and debris from the street by just a small group of white spectators mixed in with the all-white crowd on the sidewalk. This was the first time I ever experienced anything like this, and I did not understand. I thought perhaps those people did not like the Scouts. I did not realize I was the only Scout getting hit until my den mother and the other Scout leaders came rushing over and huddled over me with their bodies and escorted me out of the danger. They never explained why, even though I kept asking, why are they hitting me? Why are they hitting me? What had I done wrong? When I got home, my mother and father, who were not at the march, were fixing me up with mercurochrome and Band-Aids and asking me, how did you fall down and get all scraped up? I told them I didn't fall down. I told them exactly what happened. For the first time in my life, my parents sat me down at the age of 10 and explained racism to me. I had absolutely no idea what they were talking about. It was inconceivable to me that someone who had never laid eyes on me, never spoken to me, knew absolutely nothing about me, would want to inflict pain upon me for no other reason than this, the color of my skin. So I did not believe my parents. But more and more incidents began happening. And I realized my parents had told me the truth. I didn't know why people felt that way, but I realized that there were some people who did. So at the age of 10, I formed a question in my mind. That question was, how can you hate me when you don't even know me? So I grew up in my adolescent years, spending a lot of time buying books on Black supremacy, white supremacy, the Nazis in Germany, the neo-Nazis over here, the Ku Klux Klan, anti-Semitism, trying to understand that ideology, trying to get the answer to my question, how can you hate me when you don't even know me? None of these books provided the answer. So then in my adult life, I thought, you know what? Who better to ask, how can you hate me when you don't even know me, than someone who would join an organization whose historical premise has been hating those who do not look like them and who do not believe as they believe. So I had my secretary who books my bands and all that kind of stuff. I said, listen, I want you to get a hold of this guy. His name is Roger Kelly. I acquired Mr. Kelly's phone number. Mr. Kelly is what's known as the Imperial Wizard. Bob White was a Grand Dragon, meaning state leader. Imperial Wizard is a national leader in the Ku Klux Klan. I was told, do not fool with Mr. Kelly, Darrell. He will kill you. But I had to have the answer to my question. I was hoping you wouldn't be the final answer if I met him. So I gave Mary his phone number and said, give him a call. Do not tell him that I'm Black, but see if he'll sit down and give your boss an interview. He wants to discuss the Ku Klux Klan. So she did. Mr. Kelly agreed. So we reserved a hotel room. Mary and I got there early. Right on time, to the minute, there was a knock on the door. Mary hops up and runs around the corner, opens the door. In walks Mr. Kelly and his bodyguard. The bodyguard was armed with a sidearm right here on his hip. When they saw me, they just kind of like froze because they were expecting a white guy. And I stood up and went like this to show I had nothing in my hands. And I approached. I said, hi, Mr. Kelly, I'm Darrell Davis. He shook my hand. The bodyguard shook my hand. Said, come on, have a seat, have a seat. Mr. Kelly sat down. And the bodyguard stood at attention to his right. And we conversed, agreed on some things, disagreed on other things. But he let me know. He let me know that I was not his equal. I was inferior, he was superior. And this was justified and determined by the color of my skin. I wasn't there to fight him, I was there to learn from him. Where does this ideology come from? Because once you learn where it comes from, you can then try to figure out how to address it and see where it's going. So we continued conversing, maybe about a little over an hour into this interview. There was kind of a strange noise in the room, kind of, and we all jumped. And I popped up out of my seat with a table between us. And I was ready to come across that table and take down Mr. Kelly and the bodyguard, because I knew that Mr. Kelly had made that noise. I didn't know what that noise was, I could not discern it, and I kept hearing the voice of the person who gave me his phone number saying, Darrell, do not fool with Roger Kelly, he will kill you. I did not want to die that day, but I knew that he made the noise, and I'm trying to think, what did I just do, what did I just say to cause him to make some kind of weird noise? And you know, I'd gone into what you call survival mode. In survival mode, people will do one of three things. Some people, you know, when you fear for your life, some people will just tense up and start shaking, and you'll be taking a hammer or a bat and hitting them on the head, and they will not even be deflecting the blow, just be like this. That is called paralysis by fear, and it is a real thing. The second thing people will do is they will try to run away as quickly as possible to put as much distance between the source of the fear and themselves. That is the best option, if you can do that. However, it was not an option for me because you cannot outrun a bullet in a motel room. I was not armed, neither was my secretary. The only person I know for sure who was armed was the bodyguard. You can see his weapon right here. I did not know if Mr. Kelly had a weapon up under his jacket or not. He was wearing a dark blue suit and tie. The third option is do a preemptive strike to mitigate the danger. In other words, get them before they get you. So I was about to do that. And when I came up out of my seat, I was looking right into Mr. Kelly's eyes. I didn't say a word, but my eyes were speaking loud and clear. In fact, my eyes were shouting so loud he could hear my eyes. My eyes were saying to him, what did you just do? Well, Mr. Kelly's eyes had fixated upon mine, and his eyes were silently asking me the same question. Well, the bodyguard had his hand on his gun, looking back and forth between the Klan leader and me, like, what did one of y'all just do? Well, Mary, she realized what happened. She had filled the hotel room ice bucket with ice and put some cans of soda in there to get them cold, to be hospitable, and offer Mr. Kelly a beverage. The ice had melted, and the cans came cascading down the ice. And then it made that same noise. And we all began laughing at how ignorant we all had been. Now, I won't say this was a learning moment, but it was definitely a teaching moment. And what was taught was this: all because some foreign, an underscore, highlight, circle the word foreign, entity of which we were ignorant, being the bucket of ice and cans of soda, entered into our little comfort zone via the noise that it made, we all became fearful and accusatory of one another. Thus, ignorance breeds fear. We fear those things we do not understand. If we do not keep that fear in check, that fear in turn will breed hatred, because we hate those things that frighten us. If we do not keep that hatred in check, that hatred in turn will breed destruction. We want to destroy those things that we hate. Why? Because they cause us to be afraid. But guess what? They may have been harmless and we were just ignorant. We saw the whole chain almost unravel to completion had the bodyguard drawn his gun and shot, namely me or my secretary, because it's his job to protect his boss and protect himself. Or had I pounced and hurt one of them, trying to protect myself or my secretary. We did see that whole chain unravel to completion 3 months ago in Charlottesville, Virginia, 2 hours from where I live, because ignorance was present, fear was present, hatred was present, and destruction occurred when a white supremacist got in his car and tried to mow down people and resulted in killing one young lady named Heather Heyer. So we carried on with this interview, no more incidents. I would invite Mr. Kelly to my home. He would come to my home. He'd bring his bodyguard. Bodyguard would sit on the couch next to him. Sometimes the bodyguard would get bored, pull out his gun, start twirling it on his finger like this, while Mr. Kelly and I talked. I would invite over some of my other friends, my Jewish friends, my Black friends, my white friends, other people, just to engage in conversation with Mr. Kelly. Other than me, I want him to experience different people. This went on for a couple of years. He did not invite me to his home, but he would have dinner or lunch at my table with me, this inferior person that he deemed not his equal. After a couple of years, he began coming down to my house by himself, a national leader in the Ku Klux Klan. And then he began inviting me to his house. I would see his Klan den, and I would take pictures and take notes for my own knowledge and things. Then he began inviting me to Klan rallies. I'd go to these Klan rallies. They'd have a 20 or 30-foot cross, wooden cross, two beams tied together, wrapped in burlap. The burlap was soaked in what they call Klan cologne, otherwise known as diesel fuel or kerosene. And Klansmen and Klanswomen in their robes and hoods and torches were paraded around in a circle around the cross. And either the Grand Dragon or Imperial Wizard would say, "Klansmen, halt!" And they'd all stop. And they'd say, "For God," and they'd say, "For God," "For race," "For race," "For country," "For country." Klansmen approached the cross, and they'd all close in to the base of the cross. Klansmen light the cross, and they throw their torch down at the foot, and whoosh, this big cross would be on fire. There you go. There's one rally, such rally with the Klansmen. That's conversing with the Klan at a rally. And there's a rally with the cross on fire. Now, they would give speeches, I would take more notes and try to absorb and try to understand, not that I'm believing in what they're preaching, but I'm trying to learn and understand what is the impetus for it. So, after a while, CNN got wind of this and wanted to do a story on me. They knew me as a musician, they knew who Mr. Kelly was as a Klan leader. So they followed me to a rally. First, they came to my gig on Friday night to show what I really do. And then Saturday morning, they followed me to a Klan rally 2 hours from my house. And they said to me, "Do you think Mr. Kelly will even talk to us?" I said, "I will do better than that. When this rally is over, I will get Mr. Kelly, the Imperial Wizard of the Klan, to come to my house and we can interview the Klan leader inside a Black man's house." I said, "Oh, okay." So they filmed the rally. And when the rally was over, I spoke with Roger Kelly, told him what was going on, and he agreed. He drove without his bodyguard 2 hours out of his way. He sat in my basement and interviewed with CNN. And this clip was shown every hour for 24 hours all over the world. I'm going to show it to you right now, and I want you to pay particular attention to what Mr. Kelly says. He says that even though he and I would do different things together, it did not change his views on the Klan, because his views on the Klan had been cemented in his mind for years. Then he goes on to say how he believes in separation of the races, because he finds that to be in the best interest of all races. But listen to what he says about respect towards the end of the clip. Please show the clip.
Davis is one of the few African.
I got more respect for that black man than I do you white niggers out there.
Rejecting the business of white supremacy. Opens up the old Davis to the backstage with his freedom carried above the Governor Kelly. It's not unusual for blacks and whites to be friends, but it is unusual for a black man and a Klan leader to have a cousin over an oral soda after a key event. The relationship started in a book Davis was writing. The secretary thought of the interview with Roger Kelly didn't tell him Davis was black. That's why he talked so well. Davis writing about the play, Kelly writing about Davis.
You get to know one another, make a difference. He knows different came from views about the Klan, because my views on the Klan have been pretty much cemented in my mind for years.
Kelly and his Klan friends go to get Davis and his band. Davis I saw him on the front row.
I'm a follower of man and hell man, because I believe in what he stands for and he believes in what I stand for. A lot of times we don't agree with everything, but at least he respects me to sit down and listen to me. And I respect him to sit down and listen to him.
The strange relationship of a KKK wizard and his black buddy. In Washington, I'm Carl Rochelle. See you on Sunday morning.
Respect is the key. Sitting down and talking, not necessarily agreeing, but respecting each other to air their points of view. Because of that respect and my willingness to listen and his willingness to listen to me, he ended up leaving the Klan, and there's his robe right there. I am a musician, not a psychologist or sociologist. If I can do that, anybody in here can do that. Take the time to sit down and talk with your adversaries. You will learn something and they will learn something from you. When two enemies are talking, they're not fighting, they're talking. It's when the talking ceases that the ground becomes fertile for violence. So keep the conversation going. Thank you all very much.
So what are your thoughts? How many of you have ever heard it talked about in that way? How many of you have ever seen anything like that before?
Not something like that, but I used to be part of the North Star Association, and we would do bring pickups at the rallies, and it's kind of the same thing. 1% of rifles do not converse with each other, but in our tent for breakfast, it was like Switzerland. Everybody talked and laughed and get along, but as soon as they got up and left the tent, they didn't talk to each other. They all went to their own areas of the rally. And it was interesting, kind of similar.
Yeah.
It's so weird because they can actually laugh and enjoy each other inside that tent. Now they all do their own.
Yeah. What are we seeing in society now? You mentioned Charlottesville. This next clip talks a bit about it. And I'll tell you a story about it myself. This is a long interview. I'm not going to make you watch all of it. I am going to key into the first part where he talks about Charlottesville.
Please, you have one opinion, they have another opinion, and rather than pursue combat or a fight, you avoid talking about it when nothing gets done. Okay, well, I grew up as a child of parents in the U.S. Foreign Service. So I lived a lot overseas as a kid and come back home every 2 years back here, then go back overseas again. Today, as a professional musician, I travel all over the world performing. When you combine my travels with my folks, combined with my travels now as an adult, I've been in a total of 57 different countries on 6 continents. So I've experienced a multitude of ethnicities, cultures, religions, practices, and all of that has helped shape who I've become and my perspective. This right here was about 27 years ago
You've seen
at a
this.
KKK rally. I was curious as to how someone can hate me who didn't even know me. This was the result of me marching in a Cub Scout parade in Belmont, Massachusetts, as the only Black Scout. While most of the people cheered us, we were marching from Lexington to Concord to commemorate the ride of Paul Revere. People were yelling, the British were coming and smiling and cheering us. But there was a small group of people on the sidewalk who began throwing rocks and bottles and soda pop cans at me, and I was getting hit. And I did not understand it. I thought I had done something wrong. And my Cub master, my troop leader, my den mother all came rushing over and escorted me out of the danger, protecting me with their bodies. These were all white people protecting me and the ones assaulting me. When I got home, my mom and dad asked me, how did you fall down and get all scraped up as you're putting Band-Aids on me? I said, I didn't fall down. I told them exactly what had happened. For the first time in my life, my mom and dad sat me down and explained what racism was to me. Believe it or not, at the age of 10, I had never heard the word racism. I've been around people from all over the world at that age, and I got along with each and every one of them, regardless of their color. This thing, racism, was totally to find more commonalities. And then by the time you get here, we have forged a relationship. You nourish the relationship, you get closer, find more commonalities. By the time you get here, you have developed somewhat of a friendship. And the trivial things that you have in contrast, such as skin color, or whether you go to a temple, a mosque, a synagogue, or a church, begin to matter less and less. Now, let's take a look at a few more recent things here. This is one of the many incidents that happened in Charlottesville at the Event the Right rally. These guys coming down the steps are Ku Klux Klan members. You don't know that because you don't see them in their robes and hoods. I know that because I know each and every one of those guys.
I'll pause it there for a second. This was a viral picture. And he'll go into more detail about it. I was actually 2 years into teaching, and I do things then as basically I do now every day. I talk about what's going on in the world. So that definitely came up. Whenever I was talking about it, I said, looks to me like neither one are the good guys. It's like these are both bad things. I had a student who vehemently disagreed. Said, this guy's obviously the good guy because these guys are white supremacists, so he's justified. Spent a while talking about it. Then he stopped coming to class, and I didn't see him again after that semester. Society, that's happening a lot.
The guy in the white shirt is the Grand Dragon of Virginia, the state leader. He's trying to hit the black guy with his Confederate flagpole. The black guy trying to set them on fire with an improvised flamethrower, aerosol can, and a match. The Imperial Wizard, which is the national leader, you don't see him. He's about right here. He's going to come down the steps before the guy lit the flamethrower. He's wearing a black bandana, a blue jean vest, and black jeans. He comes around, walks this way, turns around, and now the guy has lit the fire. He sees him trying to set his members on fire. The Imperial Wizard pulls out a gun, points it at the black guy's head, and shouts, "Hey, nigger," and then lowers the gun and fires it. And the bullet goes into the ground right there to the gravel just opposite the black gentleman's foot. And then he turns and he walks away right past the Charlottesville police. We're standing there in green neon vests, watching the whole thing go down and doing absolutely nothing. I'm going to show you the video of this. I'm just setting it up for you to understand what happens here. And then I want to walk you through it. Okay. That's Charlottesville, Virginia. That's not New York City. You know what? It could be. Don't think for 1 second, folks, that can't happen right here. It can happen right here. Anywhere hate happens, that can happen. And Charlottesville is as much a part of your city as New York City is. Any city in this country is your city as an American. All American cities are your city. You can only live in one at a time, but they all belong to you. So the problems that Charlottesville has are your problems. Just like when the Trade Center got hit here in New York City, that's the problem of people living in Chicago and Los Angeles. This is one of our cities. All right? What do you do when you see something like that happen in your society? Well, should we blame people? Let's blame the black guy. He's setting people on fire, trying to set them on fire with a flamethrower. Yeah, he should be blamed. He shouldn't be going around trying to set somebody on fire. Let's blame the Klansmen for trying to hit somebody with their Confederate flagpoles. That's wrong too. Let's blame the Klan leader for pulling out a gun and firing it. That should not have happened. Let's blame the police, who we pay to what? Serve and protect. And they did absolutely nothing. Well, we can blame them, they didn't do their job. Or maybe we should blame ourselves for allowing our society to come to that point in the 21st century. You know what? Everybody you blame, they're going to blame you back or blame somebody else. So all you're going to be doing is spending all day blaming, and nothing gets accomplished. I'm going to tell you something. Our society can only become one of two things. It can become one, that which we sit back and let it become, or it can become two, that which we stand up and make it become. So I have a question for you all. Don't answer the question right now, but before you go to bed tonight, when you go home at the end of your day or evening, whatever, before you go to bed, I want you to think about my question and answer it to yourself.
That's enough of that for now. So what are your thoughts about that question? About this issue and where we're at in society right now? Is it getting better or worse?
Social media, not something we reject, so we can see, stories, we can see where racist people are divided, but they don't see where we all come together.
Yeah.
They don't worse than the fact that they just- Vaccinated versus unvaccinated.
Yeah, COVID, vaccinated versus unvaccinated. There are lots of ideological lines. What's interesting about this guy is, give me a ballpark figure for how many people you think he has personally caused to leave the Klan. 200. He himself, 200. It's one person. It's interesting. As we stop and look at the way society is going right now, it's violent, fight, silence, train about bias, unconscious bias. It's like if you're dealing with someone who's racist, that's not going to help any. This guy, on the other hand, has taken a couple hundred people who exclusively hate people because of the way that they look, has changed it himself. It's interesting. Very interesting. our responses in society right now. They aren't getting better, no. You talked about crossing that uncomfortable line, going and starting up conversations. Yeah, you don't get that in social media. You get a lot of people talking about or making things more difficult. Society itself. Well, I said hate speech. What is hate speech? Yeah. What have we started doing towards it? We've started to criminalize hate speech. If you do that, is he going to be able to have that conversation with the Klansmen that got the whole thing moving? No. Why? Because if he says it, it's a crime. Here in the United States, we don't have exclusively hate speech statutes yet. In most places, some there are, in some things. Now what happens is you hear the statement, I won't give you a platform. I won't talk to you. I'm going to shut you down. That's what you see. How many people has that converted? Not good.
Anything like someone were to talk down the way I believe, like, fallacies and things like that, that almost makes me not want to even listen or like
Yeah.
believe it. So I think it's like pushing me away from this area.
Definitely. Yeah, a little later in this, he talks a little bit about everyone just wants to be heard. It's like, you don't let that person speak. Why would they listen to you? It's consensual in that regard. Communication has to be. But is it right now? Don't know. The next thing. I've got that right here. We'll just open it up and play it. Okay, I won't do that. Download. I thought this was interesting. I caught this, what was this? A couple of years
Next year.
right?
Okay, I want to ask you about something totally separate because you were in this Google hearing. The CEO of Google, Sundar Pichai, testifying before your committee about a number of concerns. You took an opportunity to push back on Republican claims of bias in Google searches. In the middle of this hearing, you Googled Republican Steve Scalise. You Googled after that Republican Steve King to show that there were favorable stories, including from conservative outlets about Scalise, negative coverage of King, and you made the point, essentially, that's not because of a Google algorithm, it's because of what these members do and say. I will say it was clever, it caught some attention, but I wonder, have you thought that maybe you and other Democrats have missed opportunities to use your time to press Google's CEO at a time when these large tech companies are struggling to manage content, perpetuating conspiracy theories? They're so vulnerable to outside interference. Isn't that a focus that could have been a missed opportunity?
So it's a very good point you make. I would love if I could have more than 5 minutes to question witnesses. Unfortunately, I don't get that opportunity. However, I would love to be able to regulate the content of speech. The First Amendment prevents me from doing so. And that's simply a function of the First Amendment. But I think over a long run, it's better that government does not regulate the content of speech. I would urge these private sector companies to regulate it better themselves, but it's really nothing that I believe government can do. And so that's been my position all along.
All right, Governor, pardon me, Congressman, I promoted you, as you see. Congressman Ted Lieu from California, thank you so much.
So what'd you hear there? Not political. I don't care about the politics. Is there anything that was troubling about that? I would love to regulate the content of speech. I want to control what you say. You mentioned social media. That's what they were discussing. It's like Social media's response to hatred has been to try to regulate. On the street, they don't have that ability. On the street, we don't have that ability. In theory, I guess. Say, if you get enough people, maybe you can. Should you?
It's like a private company or, I don't. Why not?
Well, they're allowed to because they're a private company.
Yeah.
But should you? Maybe.
I don't think the government necessarily. It's kind of like when you turn on an organization, it's like, here's rules set in place. It's like, oh, you can't post this on social media. It's like, okay, whatever. It's like, we're not business. Taking regulations, all of a sudden, it's like a.
It's
It's like not the same thing, but that same principle, where it's like, oh, in my house, these are the rules I have to follow.
Mhm.
So like overall, like maybe, not obviously, because no constitution should do that, but if you're signing up to be a part of the social media platform.
But that's Google, right?
Mhm.
So that's like a very big platform.
Mhm.
So it's not just like, a lot of people go to Google to like learn stuff. So
Mhm.
like that could mean that they just like block all of those certain things.
It affects learning. It affects information out there. There's a lot of power with that. There is bias involved. Interesting. So if you silence an idea, what happens to that idea? Does it? No. Interestingly. Orwell, 136. Make that next time. Download that right there. No, that's this. We'll go back to some shit. Here. Yep. Oh, I guess I haven't downloaded that one yet. We'll download that. Or open it up. 130. You guys ever heard of Orwell? As a joke, hopefully you guys have all heard of George Orwell,
Oh, yeah,
1984.
radio.
Yeah, he did radio stuff too. Okay, 1984 is probably his best thing. This is a, what's this? Politics in the English language. Okay, so basically what he's doing here is he's talking about bad language, politicization of speech. You got that in there, but also stuff like this. Okay, 5 passages. Let me make that larger. So on the board. These 5 passages have not been picked out because they are especially bad. I could have quoted far worse. Illustrate various of the mental vices from which we now suffer. These are a little below average, but fairly representative. Read that. I am not indeed sure whether it is not true to say that the Milton who once seemed not unlike a 17th century Shelley had not become, out of the inexperience ever more bitter and each year more alien to the founder of the Jesuit sect, which nothing could induce him to tolerate. That's a professor. That sounds like something. How many double negatives are in there? What are you trying to say? Sometimes I'll say it's not uncommon. It's not common. It's also low, high enough level that it's not uncommon. Right? So I want to get down here to 136. That's 29. One 35, 136. All right. Make that larger. Let's move you over here. Larger. In our time, political speech and writing are largely defense of the indefensible. Things like continuance of British rule in India, Russian purges, deportation, atom bomb on Japan can indeed be defended, but only by arguments which are too brutal for most people to face, which do not square with the professed aims of political parties. Thus, political language has largely consisted of euphemisms, question begging, cloudy vagueness. Defenseless villages are bombarded from the air, inhabitants driven out of the countryside, cattle, machine gun, huts on fire. This is pacification. Millions of peasants are robbed of their farms, trudging along the roads and work to carry. Transfer of population, rectification of frontiers. Right? People imprisoned for years without trial, shot in the back of the neck, sent to die in the Arctic labor camps. Elimination of unreliable elements. Interesting word. Such phraseology is needed if one wants to name things without calling up mental pictures of them. For instance, some comfortable English professor defending Russian totalitarianism. You cannot say outright, I believe in killing off your opponents when you get good results by doing so. Probably say something like this. While freely conceiving that the Soviet regime exhibits certain features which the humanitarian may be inclined to deplore, we must, I think, agree that a certain curtailment of the right to political opposition is an unavoidable concomitant of transitional periods, that the rigors which the Russian people have been called upon to undergo have been amply justified in the sphere of concrete achievement. Speech. What is it saying? What is it trying to say? How do people use it? When are you allowed to? These are all significant questions that we're facing right now. Right? Talk about people choosing to listen, people choosing not to, whether you can or cannot say something, and things not being as what they may. What do you guys know about Soviet Union? A little bit. Okay. Yes.
I remember once I watched it. I watched it and like at one point there was a girl from the Soviet Union. Obviously.
Hmm?
So that's fun.
He's our hero,
Yeah.
Captain Flamet. History of Soviet Union, basically you're talking about maybe tens of millions of people die, starvation, forced labor, things of that nature. Here, what this person is doing is justifying. That's what you're talking about. When are things justifiable? When are they not? What we'll talk about it from an ethical standpoint. Following orders. Right? You guys ever heard any studies on following orders? Okay. Whenever we talk about policing, I showed a book, Ordinary Men, right? They were given a choice. That's one side of it. There are three things I like to show anytime I talk about choices. One, you guys have heard the Stanford Prison Experiment, I'm sure. Yes? This book in this class, I think it's down there, talks about the Stanford Prison Experiment. So we're in the prison stuff. Right? What happened in that experiment?
They went so bad. They had to close it down early.
Mhm.
They were, these guys were, prison guards were absolutely like a whole zillion of these people.
Yeah.
It was
Out and out torture.
torture. It was just bizarre.
Yeah. So what they did, those of you may not remember, may not know. Professor took a class of students, split half of them into prisoners, half of them into guards. They ran a prison out of the basement for less than 2 weeks. And during that time, it turned into guards are torturing their prisoners. Why? Because they're prisoners. Waking them up at night, spraying fire extinguishers, all kinds of nice things to do to people. No food. I mean, yeah. And that's just normal people, population like yourself. Right? Milgram experiment. That's a psychology one. You should be familiar with that one too. Any of you heard of Pilgrim?
That's a shot, right?
Basically what it was. Guys brought in a room, you're gonna run this switch. Every time the person in the next room that we're testing gets something wrong, you give them a shock. Every time he gets something wrong, the next shock needs to be a little bit stronger. Actually bring that to them. How far will they go with that shock? Many of them went all the way to death. Why? Under the prompting, you must do so. The research demands it. It's needed. We're already having people say you can't have these conversations, you can't talk about these things in these places. You have to color what you say certain ways or another. It starts with language, then it gets worse from there. Then you end up here. We'll talk more about that next time. Do you guys have any questions that you want to talk about? Civil way is you keep talking. Talk with those, especially those you don't agree with. Anything else? It goes downhill from there fast. We'll pick up that thought next time. We'll finish it up pretty quickly. And hopefully we'll do a review next class and then we can call off Thursday. If we run long, we'll do a review on Thursday. And that will be our last class. We're almost done. Yeah, next semester starts in 3 weeks now. About feels like it. Have a great day. Have a great weekend. I'll see you soon.
Bonus